to us before in this major project management exercise that he's been through over some years of bringing the fruition of the Adelaide Oval to all of us and to the world. I first met this young man, and he'd like to stay young, as would I. It was a bit difficult. Back in 1997, when we both worked on a major project in Adelaide, which was the International Champions Trophy for hockey, which brought the 8 top teams in the world to Adelaide to play hockey. And as you can appreciate, we had a huge budget to make this event happen and needed a little bit of assistance along the way with someone who knew how to make things happen, and that is Andrew Daniels. And we've been friends for some years, but he always makes things happen. And so what we work, how we eat, and when we come to the games in this Adelaide Oval, this is the man who made it happen. And we're very fortunate that we have someone like Andrew Daniels who makes things happen. Please welcome our guest speaker, Andrew Daniels.
Thank you, Jeff, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you again, because it's almost exactly 3 years since I first spoke to Adelaide Rotary. At the time, I had just started the role as CEO of the Stadium Management Authority. We were over there in the McLaughlin room. This, where we are right now, is a hole in the ground. And we've certainly come a very long way since then. And back then, I actually spoke to you about what was planned. There were lots of lovely images about hypothetical things that were going to be built. And then about a year ago, I spoke to you all about how we'd gone through the whole project, how we'd actually made it happen with a lot of help. Obviously, Rod Hook's here today, which is fantastic. The team from DipTie, the team from the consulting group was absolutely wonderful in bringing this whole amazing development together. But now we're at a stage where we are 18 months in. It's just almost exactly 18 months since we had our very first bounce of the ball in March last year. And really, the way in which this oval has helped revitalise Adelaide and helped it through some pretty grim times that have been facing it with Holden and all sorts of other bad news. The President, David Egan, gave me a bit of a title, a unifying force and a beacon to the world. So I put that up there, A, because I thought it was a fantastic title. B, I thought it was going to be a lot to live up to, but we'll certainly see how it can go. So there is absolutely no doubt that Adelaide, South Australia, they have really embraced this Adelaide Oval. They've embraced it in a way that I have to say I was really hoping was going to happen, but far exceeds my expectations, my dreams. The original estimate when the planning was done for the Oval was about 1.4 million people would be coming through the Oval every year. Well, it's actually in excess of 1.8 million. So we're nearly 500,000 more people are coming through the Adelaide Oval in a 12-month period than was ever anticipated. In football, which you can see in that photograph there, the response has been tremendous. Over 2 million people have attended football games in 2014 and 2015. One of the great things is that the crowds have been maintained. We always expected there would be a honeymoon period, but the attendance levels have remained. The excitement, the whole event experience that patrons receive when they come to the Adelaide Oval, its location, its amazing architecture, all add to that. One of the most interesting days that I've had here was Showdown 39. For those of you like me who are not very good at Roman numerals, I had to ask what that number was, but apparently it's actually 39. We had 54,500 people at that game, set the record crowd for the Adelaide Oval. Now, as Rod and a lot of people here will know, the official capacity of the Adelaide Oval is 53,500. So, and I'm sure that some of you may want to ask how we actually squeezed in an extra 1,000 people, and I can assure you that I'm not going to answer that question. The other great thing is it's not just football, but in cricket, the response for the Oval has been absolutely outstanding. So to be able to look back now, that very first Ashes Test match, December 2013, so it's 23 months ago now, we had the biggest attendance since the 1950s and the 5th biggest attended Test match of all time. And when I actually look back at some of the photographs from the 1930s, particularly the Bodyline series, and you look at the crowds that were on the mounds and the crowds that were in the stands, and I actually think, well, if we tried to do that these days, I'd go to jail, because you can't manage crowds in the way that used to happen. But the fact that the attendance was so great over the 5 days, that the Oval also delivered a result. In fact, the 2 Test matches that have been held here, India and England, have both delivered results on day 5, which is absolutely it's exactly what groundsmen want. They want a pitch that gives everybody a bit of everything, whether it be a batsman, bowler, fast bowler, spin bowler, and to have a game that goes the whole way through for those 5 days. We've also been experiencing amazing support for the Big Bash to actually hold the Australian record for a domestic Big Bash ground of 52,600 people. That was basically the same number, effectively, as we got for the Phil Walsh showdown, because we lose about 2,000 spaces for the side screens that are at the Adelaide Oval. So cricket has warmly embraced the Oval. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of fear about how the drop-ins would work. They're getting better and better, and they're being prepared out there literally as we speak for this summer of cricket, which Saka launched this morning. As a credit to Adelaide and this development, we have been selected as the location for the world's first day-night test match. So that is being held here in Adelaide on the 29th of November against New Zealand, using the pink ball with its green stitching and all of the appropriate concern that goes along with that sort of development. That, on the cricket side, we keep way out of that. What we are really focused on is ensuring that the Adelaide Oval can deliver these amazing event experiences and be selected to trial these types of new events. On that exact same vein is the international nature of the Adelaide Oval, and how effectively I believe we have helped Adelaide glow in this global spotlight. To be selected earlier this year to be the venue for the India-Pakistan match during the Cricket World Cup, not only was it the second highest risk game in a security sense, the highest risk game of course being the final, the second highest risk game was the India-Pakistan match, and that was all because of the politics on the subcontinent. But we had an enormous crowd here that day, and it was one of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had here, where most of the crowd were visitors. They were from interstate, they were from overseas. I spoke to people who'd driven overnight from Sydney to be here and to all be part of that amazing game. People were holding placards saying, "Politics pulls us apart, cricket holds us together." We had an amazing experience out there on the Telstra Plaza. Just before gates open, I was out there with our Deputy Head of Security, and a whole crowd of people from India were going up the podium area there and singing and chanting, and a whole crowd came along from Pakistan and started to head up towards that same area. And I said to our security guy, we're in trouble here. I think we might need to do something. But the group from Pakistan waited until the Indians had finished, and then the Indians got down and the group from Pakistan got up and cheered, and they all got up there together. It was the most amazing, unifying experience, and such a classic example of what sport can do, and in the great environs of the Adelaide Oval. The other part, or extending from that, is taking the Adelaide Oval to the world stage. We know that the Adelaide Oval has to be much more than just football and cricket. The taxpayers of South Australia have spent over $500 million. The budget was $535. It's actually come in under that at about $526 million. So an amazing result to deliver this extraordinary redevelopment on time and under budget, which is probably almost unheard of. But now we need to make sure that everybody in South Australia gets an opportunity to experience what they love here. So events such as the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, I'm sure there's a few old rockers who are going to be from here, are going to be at those concerts. But also we've gone a step further. We've embraced SALA, the South Australian Living Arts Festival, to be displaying here, which they have for the last 2 years. The Come Out Festival started here this year. We're doing special events next year which haven't been announced as yet, but with the festival and the Fringe. The whole aim is to continue to expand what the Adelaide Oval can deliver, to ensure that whatever somebody's interest is, they have a chance to come along and experience what actually happens here. One of the things that was said to me during the process, particularly as we were building, by some people who I have to say weren't in favour of the project, was that, Andrew, you're just doing something that only 50,000 people will use. And my response then was, no, that's not true. We actually want everybody in South Australia to be able to use this Adelaide Oval. And I think our expansion and continuing pressure on ourselves to build up the different events that you can participate in here is all testimony to that. We've also obviously done a lot of soccer here. We started last year with Adelaide United versus Malaga. I have to say I'd never heard of Malaga, but actually they're a very important and major side from La Liga in Spain. And they were our first foray into international soccer, and it was really important in July last year. We put on that game with only 3 weeks' notice, and we had nearly 25,000 people here as they played against Adelaide United. But it was really important that we did that, and we did that successfully, to show, in this case FIFA, what the capability of the Adelaide Oval was technically, from a playing surface, from the facilities that we can offer to international teams, and also, of course, to the fans, that when you come and see a rectangular game here at the Adelaide Oval, what's your interaction with the sport? How are you going to enjoy the sporting experience? So that was extremely successful. It then flowed on to the Adelaide United Melbourne Victory game, which we had over 30,000 people here last year, and was one of the most insane crowd things I've ever seen. The soccer fraternity certainly get very excited, and they like to get very involved in the game. Liverpool, for those of you who were at the Liverpool game, hearing 53,000 people sing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and to be in tune and on time, that was great. Adelaide Oval also needs to be a destination in its own right, and to help with this, we have some outstanding volunteer tour guides. I'm looking at one right now who I understand loves to take a good long tour around the Adelaide Oval. But it's fabulous. We've got around 115 volunteers now who help us with our tours. The Adelaide Oval takes around 40,000 people a year on tours through its amazing facilities. We do in a month what the previous Oval used to do in a year. So a huge lot of interest, a huge lot of big tourism impact from the Adelaide Oval. And I think as President would testify, we have people from all over the world. We have school kids, we have obviously a lot of people from Adelaide and South Australia, we have people from interstate, we have people from overseas, a lot, the usual suspects, New Zealand, England, but I've met people here from Czechoslovakia who wanted to come and do the tour of the Oval. I wasn't quite sure why, but I was delighted to see them here. People from the USA. So it's really the importance of the Adelaide Oval as a tourism driver, and in addition to our tourism profile, has been so important. We also look to stretch the Adelaide Oval well beyond a sporting venue. We are South Australia's largest function venue. We have 22 separate rooms, the cathedral room that the Rotary Club uses every week, which is absolutely fantastic. I think Sir Donald Bradman was extremely wise all those years ago in bringing the Rotary Club of Adelaide here as its base. And I can remember actually when I spoke to you a couple of years ago, you were about to move on down to the National Wine Centre because of the redevelopment that was going on here. And I said to you then, I want you to come back. And I was very relieved when you did come back. And it's great that we can be a base for historic clubs such as this one. We also think, and we really target the Adelaide Oval as being a launch pad for future success in South Australia. When the original studies were done back in 2010, the South Australian Centre for Economic Studies estimated that a redeveloped Adelaide Oval would bring in about $111 million worth of additional economic activity into Adelaide. Well, this year, independently assessed $330 million, quite extraordinary. 90 million of that alone came from the Cricket World Cup and the enormous influx of people that we had to that game. You couldn't get a room in Adelaide, they were sleeping at the airport. It's quite extraordinary. I think it's more than that though, in terms of unifying and being a beacon for Adelaide. It's bringing economic activity, obviously, it's bringing people in to watch games of football, it's bringing people in to watch games of cricket, to watch the Rolling Stones. We sold 10,000 tickets interstate for the Rolling Stones. But also it's providing that spark, that excitement, that fun in this whole riverbank precinct. Because part of all of that is also to make sure that the money that flows from the Adelaide Oval flows back to grassroots. There's been a big, I'm sure all of you saw the hoo-ha in the press last year about stadium deals for football and all the rest of it. As far as AOSMA is concerned, as far as the stadium management is concerned, the proceeds from football games go back to football. The proceeds from cricket games go back to cricket. A lot of the money, so $11 million this year additional will go to Port and the Crows. $12 million next year will go to Port and the Crows. They are getting huge additional streams of revenue to run their clubs. Saka and Sandful need to replace the revenue that they lost when they ran their own respective venues, because their revenue goes back into grassroots, whether it be into individual clubs and helping kids and development of sport, all the way through to the state teams with, for example, the Redbacks and the Scorpions. The Stadium Management Authority also is entirely responsible for looking after this Adelaide Oval. So all of the costs, the entire cost of running this Oval is borne by us, not by the taxpayer at all. And we have to put $3 million a year into a sinking fund for the long-term maintenance and development of this Oval. And then there's rent that starts to kick in from this year as well. So the entire business model has to work in order to ensure that we do stand on our own 2 feet and the benefits flow back to all South Australians. South Australia's Beacon to the World is a really big title, and I'm really glad that David picked that up, because there's so many. What we are trying to do here is really help Adelaide take some confidence in itself. But the amazing architecture and the lighting system of this venue does actually offer some unique ways in which Adelaide can speak to the world. And I put that photograph up because that photograph is actually particularly important. That's the French flag, as I'm sure you've all worked out. And that, it was literally a spur of the moment thing, but when the Charlie Hebdo massacre happened in Paris earlier this year, I actually thought we've got to do something to, how do we in South Australia show solidarity with the French, other side of the world? Very different. You can tweet something saying, you know, we're with you, or you can, I don't know, Facebook something. But how can we do something that's actually more than that? So we changed our lights to the French flag. We didn't tell anybody, we just did it. It was extraordinary what happened. We were getting email and tweets and things back into here saying, you know, c'est magnifique Adelaide and thank you Adelaide. And Adelaide was then, it was a way in which Adelaide, and the government actually contacted us saying, geez guys, thanks, that was a good idea. But it was a way in which we could use the Oval in a unique way to talk to the world and to show solidarity to the world. So we believe that the Adelaide Oval has been a unifying fact. We believe it is a beacon for South Australia. I'm absolutely delighted that one of the oldest Rotary clubs has made it its home, and look, I'd be more than happy to take any questions if you wish.
We also have a roving microphone. I think it is working.
Thank you for that great presentation. It seems to me to be a great foundation and centre point for a Commonwealth Games bid. I wondered if you could comment and work with on that.
This would be a fantastic location for a Commonwealth Games or an Olympic Games or anything else. The Oval has been designed in a way that it is truly multi-purpose, and its surface is quite outstanding. So there's no doubt that should South Australia elect to bid for a Commonwealth Games, we're absolutely here ready to do whatever we can to make that an enormous success.
About rugby sevens, might we get that back again?
I'd love to get rugby back. Unfortunately, dealing with the ARU is an interesting group. They have just recontracted the rugby sevens. But we are in discussions with a lot of, how can I put this, a lot of sports about a lot of different activities here. And in fact, we're in negotiations on events. We have events booked in for next year which haven't been announced as yet. And we're looking at some pretty interesting things all the way out to 2020. So one of our key aims is to keep new product. Adelaide's been overlooked so much for so many great events, and to keep new things coming in to South Australia. So all I can say is watch this space. I don't know about the sevens, but certainly watch this space.
What about pressure to build on the mound? Are you going to be able to hold fire with
Absolutely.
the stadium bigger?
Absolutely. 53,500 or 54,500 is actually a really good number, because you actually do need to fill it and put up the sold out sign sometimes. If you have it bigger, if you have it at 60,000, we'd never actually fill it. It's a lot of money for nothing. But even more than that, that Northern Mound with its Moreton Bays, with the Sir Kenneth Milne scoreboard, is such an integral part of this Adelaide Oval. Certainly as long as I'm here, that will never change. And I mean, it's protected in Parliament anyway, but that is so much part of the Adelaide Oval. I think Dave would be happy as well if I did.
Reg, Chris?
Thank you.
Well, people need microphones. Chris?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a terrific talk, Andrew. My question is to do with competition. It's a very competitive business, as we all know, and as you know better than anybody. To what extent are you under constant pressure of competition from other venues? And I'm thinking in particular of what they're doing in Perth now with their new stadium that they're building.
That's a really good question, Chris. The entertainment and sporting venue business is intensely competitive. When you are trying to get events such as AC/DC or Rolling Stones or a rugby match or a soccer match, there is fierce competition, not only just at a venue level but at a state level. One of the things we're really trying to do, obviously we're looking across at Perth and the development of the 1.4 billion amazing new stadium they're building over at Burswood is going to be serious competition for us. The way that we're trying to counter that is to build up our reputation so high before they come on board, so that then they've got to go out into the marketplace on the basis of they've got to knock us off. And if the promoters know or start to understand that we're a safe bet, it makes it much harder for them. But it is true, good old-fashioned, ugly, down and dirty competition.
I think we have one last.
Thank you for your presentation. Just looking at the other end of the spectrum, at grassroots, getting more kids out and having football have their lots of kids, but doing more of that, and also the involvement more of women involved with sports as two things possibly based on gender. Be interested in the feedback as far as those two things.
Both absolutely critical.
And the third thing is possibly starting the city today from here, instead of where it traditionally is.
Yes, well, Okay, look, there's a whole host of things there, but your points about kids and grassroots are absolutely correct. And it's wonderful what happens when you actually put kids out onto the Adelaide Oval, when they actually get a chance to run out onto the Oval, whether it be with Auskick or whether it be during summer when some of the clinics that are held out here have kids lift when they run out and they'll go, whoa, look at this, it's just, or other appropriate language that they tend to use. So that is incredibly important in giving them the enthusiasm. Building up women in participation in sport, particularly at the elite level. It's been fantastic, and we're offering a whole, I think that if you look at the Scorpions, the South Australian women's team, and how they have lifted and their profile has lifted, and we're trying to develop new and improved facilities for them and get more international games here as well to lift the profile of women's sport. So it's all part of how the Adelaide Oval can be used as this unifying factor.
Thank you, Andrew. Look, I think we're very fortunate that not only do we have an individual who gets the job done, but he then builds on it and takes it to another level. And so Rotarians, please thank Andrew for his comments today.